She now builds ecosystems at the intersection of technology, education, and social impact. Let's welcome Michaela to share about scaling and systematizing grassroots leadership. Lessons from Python PH and PyLadies Manila. Everyone, let's welcome Michaela. Michaela, the stage is yours.
So, as Abigail mentioned, sorry. Uh, as Abigail mentioned, I'm gonna share about scaling and systematizing grassroots leadership. Uh, just kind of sharing my own lessons or our own lessons from Python PH and PyLadies Manila. Uh, but not in a way that prescribing. Just going to share, hoping that you can relate and maybe get some ideas. Um, gonna skip this because Vigil already gave a really nice intro. But hello, PyLadiesCon 2025, going green. uh, Hello, PyLadiesCon 2025. Thanks for having me, and thanks to all the organizers. Oh, let me just check my camera. Hmm. Is it better now? The camera. Um, Hello. Uh,
We still see the green screen.
hmm, Weird. Let me just. Sorry.
No, no, you're good.
Maybe I'll just remove the. How about this?
No, we still see a green screen.
Hmm. Virtual. Okay. As in, you can't see my face.
No, it's just a green screen.
Hmm. Oh wait. I don't know how to fix it. Can I go on without my face?
Yes, I think we can just proceed. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna continue. Thanks. Anyway. Some I think um a lot of people here can relate. Because most people have been organizers of or have been members of a community. Um. That Members of a community or have been like leaders of led software engineering teams, so that you realize that tech is the easy part and then people are the real challenge. um not in a negative way, it's just how things are. Because machines follow instructions, and people follow principles, and that's what makes leadership both hard and meaningful. And anyone who has ever run a volunteer community knows exactly what I mean. So, what makes a grassroots movement? So, let me ask you this. When you hear the phrase grassroots movement, what comes to mind? I'm just going to pretend that the audience reacts. um, but you can go ahead and think about your answers. So some of the things that come to mind is that when you hear a grassroots movement, it's passion, scrappiness, and genuine, even though sometimes it's scrappy. Uh, and a handful of people showing up again and again. Sometimes, a lot of times, not because they are paid, uh, but because something about it feels worth it. So, grassroots movements have heart and they have soul. They're they're held together by people who care, even when it's hard and even when it's thankless. For a long time, that was my whole understanding of what grassroots meant. Maybe it's yours too. But let's go a little deeper. When you hear the word movement, what do you picture? You can think about your answers first before I move on to the next slide. So some of the things that come up are it's a cause, it's a spark, and momentum. If you ever most days feels invisible and thankless, and if you've ever organized anything, you know that most days, yeah, you know that this is real. But why do you do it? Because once in a while, something beautiful happens. A person grows, a community shifts, a moment lands, you open doors, doors and possibilities that some people don't didn't even know existed. Uh, I know that happened to me before. And then you help someone find a job or find a friend or find confidence to try again. You change lives quietly and consistently. Sometimes you even solve problems that felt too big for one person or a few people, but you can do it through the community. And together, you create ripples of change that reach farther than you ever could. And this is the main reason why people stay. Um, and suddenly, you remember why you poured months, hours, months, years into this and why you stayed. That's the heart of a movement. And the last thing we want is to lose that heart. So, how do we scale without losing heart? So, when you, I'm gonna ask another question. When you say scaling and systematizing, what feelings come up? Um, Hope or fear? Or will the magic disappear? Structure, growth? Um, Many of us worry, even me, that if we start building systems, we lose the heart of the grassroots movement. Uh, but what if the opposite is true? So, I mean, if we want to think about, if it's possible to fix problems, we need to um, we need to think of how we could solve the real problem. So, what's the real challenge? The challenge, personally, the challenge I personally ran into is, and maybe some of you have ran into this as well, was figuring out how to keep the movement or the grassroots movement alive, or the community, in our case, the Python community, um, without burning out the same people over and over. because this is where the real struggle begins. Um, well, actually, I didn't even think about this uh, until it happened to me. So I'm gonna take you back to our origin story to illustrate that. Back in 2012, Matt and I walked into our first PyCon in the Philippines, which was organized by uh, other people. We were just attendees back then, and we didn't plan to lead anything. But also, we we found something that would turn everything around for us. Like this is the Python community. Um, the experience was that everyone was just so friendly and approachable, and we were so inspired and felt like we could do anything. So just wanted to also ask, have you ever had moments at work when you you think about your future and then you can't really imagine it doing it doing it following your elders or following your boss's footsteps. um that was my problem at that time. But then the opposite happened at PyCon. There were just so many cool people that we met that we wanted to learn from and wanted to be like when we kind of like when we grow up. So, like I said, we didn't plan to lead anything. Uh, we were just two young developers who found the community that felt alive. In 2013, after a year after PyCon PH 2012, with seven others, we incorporated Python PH because we didn't want that spark to fade. And like many new organizers, we thought passion would carry us. But what followed were years of learning the hard way. So it's the weight we didn't saw coming. Um, our first major project was organizing PyCon PH 2014. Um, early on, it took an unsustainable amount of effort before anything felt stable. And many of you know exactly how this feels, especially if you're an organizer. So passion carried us like for years. We were also learning faster than we were structuring. There were more needs, more tasks, more expectations than any small group of volunteers could reasonably carry. And to be honest, um, at that time, it was exhilarating. When you still have your original, like your OG team, you're still and also you're still young, very energetic, and everything feels possible until the work got heavier. Um, as years went on, life happened, and then some co-founders stepped back, people moved, and priorities shifted. Uh, Matt and I stayed because someone had to, but when responsibility quietly piles onto the same few people, it wears them down in ways that aren't visible from the outside. That's actually how burnout happens in communities, not from the lack of passion, but from the lack of people to share the load with. There were moments when we were honestly close to giving up. Times when we thought maybe PyCon PH ends with us. PyCon took months of work, months of recovery, and the cycle repeated every year. So even before the pandemic, the Python PH board made a decision that kind of felt scary. We proposed a strategic pause for Python Philippines and also PyCon Philippines. Um, because we thought we needed rest. Um, we needed new income streams, and we needed to clean up years of operational debt. And the most important thing is that we need to strengthen leadership. We didn't know how to back then, but we just thought we needed it. Like really needed to strengthen leadership. And then just when we made that decision, the pandemic happened. And in that space, we finally had room to think how how leadership works, and maybe how to replenish leaders. Not perfect yet, but at least we had time to think about that. So the world kind of forced us to pause at the exact time we chose to. So yeah, it was good that it happened. And then there was a moment when everything had to change. This is our turning point. By the time PyCon PH 2023 came, post pandemic, something beautiful happened. Um, New batch of like a lot of young volunteers stepped up, mostly students, years like more than 10 years younger than us. Um, these are some of them, and we call them Python PH Kaizen, the next generation leaders for Python Philippines. So what happened was they pushed us, the elders in the room, to adjust. But they also brought a sense of energy and possibility that we didn't realize we needed. And to be honest, after years of carrying things as kind of like wounded warriors, they were exactly what our organization needed. That moment showed us something important. The next generation was ready. They just needed a system that made it easier for them to lead. Um, and it's also when we realized something essential. Communities don't thrive because of exceptional leaders, although it helps. But communities thrive because of systems that make leadership shareable. And the heart of the community doesn't disappear when you build systems. The right systems should protect the heart and make it possible for people to carry it. So let me unwrap what that looked like for us and what it might look like for your own community, by sharing some of the lessons we learned the hard way. Number one is that burnout is a design problem. When we finally understood that communities thrive because leadership is shareable, the next realization came quickly. Burnout wasn't a sign that we were weak. It was a sign that the system had to change. Many of you here, especially the women leaders in the room, carry invisible labor. The coordination, the emotional steadiness, the reliability, the things don't these things people don't always thank you for, but would definitely notice if you stop doing them. Um I'm here to tell you that it's not meant to be carried alone. And then number two lesson that I learned is that leadership must be shareable. And systems make leadership shareable. Systems protect the heart of the movement. Um, and and once you see that burnout is a structural issue, you start asking different questions, not questions like who can help me, but how do we redesign the work? And some of the key questions we eventually learned to ask are what systems would make this lighter? How do we make it easier for people to lead? What tasks should never depend on one or two people again? And then we also realized that when operational chaos decreases, you get space to care again, and then you get space to be creative again, and you finally have time to mentor the next generation, which is also very rewarding and fun. Um, then, yeah, the realization is that when leadership is shareable, sustainability becomes possible. Number three lesson is that care can be designed. Um, care doesn't have to depend on vibe. It can be intentional and structured. Um, we realized that it's very simple. Volunteers are the ones who nourish the community, but no one nourishes the volunteers. And then care cannot depend on mood, personality, or availability. If we want communities to thrive uh, and last, care has to be part of the structure. So I didn't have time to add images, but uh, we drew inspiration from the Salesian Oratory Model. It's kind of like a youth development program for like a local uh, school here in the Philippines. Um, so what we really realized is that uh, volunteers should have a place where they can experience a home, a school, spirituality, and playground. Um, what do I mean by this? It doesn't have to be a physical space, but when you design like training programs or mentorship programs or even team building activities for volunteers, you have to take all of these elements into consideration. Um, at least that's what we learned, because it's a way of seeing volunteers as whole human beings, not just as pairs of helping hands. Um, and what we found is that once we designed care into the system, volunteers stopped burning out as quickly. They grew, they stepped up, and then they stayed. And that became our real source of resilience. And then number four, lesson learned. Um, Culture and values are your real levers. Um, your culture and values should shape the system. And then one size never fits all. You have to build your own identity. Mm. What works for one community won't always work for the other. Um, and our systems had to reflect um, for us, our systems had to reflect Filipino bayanihan. We call what some we call bayanihan. It's our instinct to help, our relational culture, and preference for human connection. Um, yeah. Uh, since one size never fits all, your community doesn't need to copy someone else's playbook. Like for us, this is very distinct. For I think it also it's also available in other cultures. They call it something else, but for us, it's very distinct. Bayanihan, so it was applicable for us. Um, and then your system should come from your own values, your own culture, and your own people, like feedback from your own volunteers. When your systems reflect your identity, people feel at home and they feel responsible. Oh, wait. Okay. Um, and then last but not the least, realization. Uh, Even movements need operational clarity. Even nonprofits like Python Philippines and movements need to operate like a business, not in spirit, but in clarity. Uh, Things like budgets, timelines, role definitions, onboarding, repeatable processes, and succession planning. Passion drives the mission, but structure keeps the work fair and sustainable. And fairness is a form of care, and clarity is a form of care. Kaizen wasn't created to recruit more volunteers. Um, it's not the main purpose. It's a system of stewardship, and taking care of the people who, who took care of the community. It's our way of making sure leadership never becomes concentrated and never becomes fragile, never depends on one or two people trying to carry everything alone. So, um, since we know that the work we do in the community is too important to end with us. Um, so we thought of creating this like this leadership succession program we call Kaizen. It's really the program we wish that existed when we were younger. It's a place where volunteers can grow, be mentored, try things, fail safely, and build confidence without burning out. But it's also not just about efficiency. It's mainly about people and making sure the community grows with them, not at their expense. So I just want to leave you with this message and also some pictures. Communities thrive when leadership is shareable. And another picture as a result of making leadership shareable through Kaizen. And also, if you forget everything else, just remember that you need to design for people, even when making systems, because when you take care of the people who do the work, it naturally trickles down to the community. So when people ask how Python Philippines and PyLadies Manila survived more than a decade, the answer is we stopped trying to organize more public events, just for the sake of public events, and started building the systems, training pathways, mentorship programs, safe spaces, and small communities that support the people doing the work. Because like I said, when you take care of the people who do the work, it naturally trickles down to the community, and these people take care of the community. Um, I think that's all of my presentation. Um, and you can, if you're curious to learn more about Kaizen, I linked it here. Um, eh, Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Michaela, for such an inspiring story and journey. It's community building is tough. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we have people like you who try to do stuff, bring other people in, but also wake up and keep trying, even when it's tough, right? We need more people like you in our community. So thank you so much for sharing some of the things that have worked and what the journey has looked like. We have a question for you,
Okay.
right? Someone asked that you mentioned something about like spirituality, and they wanted you to expand on that. If you could, what does spirituality mean?
um, I think it doesn't have to be religion. But like for example, it's just one example. But for example, when during our team building activities, sometimes we have like reflective questions, for volunteers, like because everything happens fast, right, in life, and then you don't have time to reflect on what happened, and even appreciate what your accomplishments, not just in the community and even, but also in life. So um, something like that.
All right. Okay, awesome. And I have one last question for you. At the time when things were not stable, right, within your community, why did you, as a person, decide to keep showing up, right? What was it like for you, and why did you decide that, I want to keep showing up in spite of all that is happening within our community?
Oh, I think it's the sense of gratitude. I think I wasn't able to explain it well, but it's the
Oh,
sense of gratitude that I felt at the beginning, when we were just starting and were the recipients of that, like the community magic and inspiration. Um, and then and also that you realize, when you go back to how you started, you remember how important the work you're doing is, and then it shouldn't end with you, at least for as long as you can keep doing it. Something like that.
all right. Right. This is very relatable, and I'm so glad that you accepted our invitation to share at Pilot This Content